السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما نافعا والحقنا بعبادك الصالحين. آمين آمين. Today's lesson number 10 in our series on the 40 Hadith of Imam Al Nawawi, and we are almost a quarter way through in the book. Today's Hadith number 9. And like we said previously, these ahadith were gathered by Imam Al-Nawawi, and they are the basis of religion. He looked and he spent 2 years of his life gathering these 40 ahadith, so that if anybody memorizes them, they have memorized a great part of their religion. We'll begin by reciting the hadith in Arabic and thereafter the translation and then the commentary. There is hadith number 9. عن أبي هريرة عبد الرحمن بن صخر رضي الله عنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: ما نهيتكم عنه فاجتنبوه، وما أمرتكم به فأتوا منه ما استطعتم، فإنما أهلك الذين من قبلكم كثرة مسائلهم واختلافهم على أنبيائهم. رواه البخاري ومسلم. On the authority of Abu Hurayrah, Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhr, may Allah be pleased with him, who said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, what I have forbidden for you, avoid, and what I have ordered you to do, do as much of it as you can. For verily, it was only their excessive questioning and disagreeing with their prophets that destroyed the nations who were before you. This hadith was collected by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. May Allah have mercy on them both. The narrator of this hadith is most famously known as Abu Hurayrah, but his name is Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhr, and there is the most strongest opinion of what his name is. However, they have differed on his name, 35 different opinions on what his actual name was. But we know him, he's most famous by his laqab, or what has been put upon him, his epithet, as Abu Hurayrah radiyallahu anhu. His name before Islam, some of them said, also in this difference of opinion, they said his name was Abdu Shams, the servant of the sun, or Shams. And when he became a Muslim, he changed his name to Abdul Rahman, and his father's name is Sakhr. Abdul Rahman, the son of Sakhr. Like I said, there are 35 different opinions on what his name is, but this is the most popular and strongest opinion on what his name was. Abu Hurayrah radiyallahu anhu, he accepted Islam in the year 7 AH, and he witnessed the conquest of Khaybar with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, according to Ibn Abd al-Barr and Ibn Ishaq and others. And Abu Hurayrah radiyallahu anhu, he is from those who are known as Al-Mukthirun al-Sab'ah, and we mentioned them previously, the 7 who narrated the most ahadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In fact, he is the Sahabi which narrated the most ahadith from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, but he only witnessed 3 or 4 years of the life of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because he accepted Islam in the year 7 AH and passed away. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam passed away in the year 11 AH. So only 3 or 4 years of the life of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam did Abu Hurayrah radiallahu anhu catch, and he came to Medina when he was 28 years old, when he accepted Islam in the year 7 age. Why did he collect so many ahadith? When he came to Medina in those last 3 or 4 years, Abu Hurayrah had 2 things that he done. Actually, 3 things happened. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam made dua for him. Secondly, he had a strong memory. And thirdly, he did not involve himself in any business affairs or affairs of this world. He made sure that he was in the service of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam all the time. Hence, every single word that came out of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's mouth is a hadith. He collected those words and he narrated from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam 5,374 hadith, and over 800 Sahaba and Tabi'in narrated hadith from Abu Hurayrah. They heard from him. And in the time of Abu Bakr and Umar, and the time of the Khulafa, they would ask him if he knew anything what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if there were certain affairs that they would come across. So Abu Hurayrah radiallahu anhu has a status, and he was from the fuqaha, the jurists of Medina, and those who gave fatwa from the Sahaba, and he was from al-Ubbad, those who worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was known for these actions. What needs to be said here specifically is that we all know Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. He's famous. He accepted Islam in the year 70 AH. But he accepted Islam from somebody from his tribe. His tribe, he comes from a tribe called Daws. It's a tribe of Yemen. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu accepted Islam when a man from his tribe, Tufail ibn Amr al-Dawsi, came back and invited his people to Islam. And Abu Hurairah was one of them who accepted this message and he became a Muslim. Tufail ibn Amr al-Dawsi is not famous. He's not as famous as Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu is very famous. But here, there's something that culminates in the link between them two. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu put in the effort. He moved to Medina. He left worldly affairs and he served Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam so that he may collect the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam or what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said. And thereafter, he narrated it and people took it from him. And when we read his name, we say, radiyallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him. And we pray for him. And he narrated this vast number of ahadith and he became somebody who is known and somebody who people remember and pray for after his death. And he's from the Sahaba, the companions of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Tufail ibn Amr al-Dawsi accepted Islam long before him. But Abu Hurairah is more famous. But if you listen to the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you will know that everything on the scale of Abu Hurairah goes back to Tufail ibn Amr al-Dawsi. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, "Ad-dallu ala al-khayri kafa'ili." The one who guides to goodness is like the one who done it. There is a lesson for us. Abu Hurairah in himself is a lesson for us. Remember that whatever action you do, and if you teach it to somebody else, beginning with your own children, and then your relatives, and then around you, and if somebody accepts Islam because of you, as long as that action remains, and if they accept Islam, meaning all of the actions go back to you, you will share in a part of that reward. So imagine a person who calls to Islam, and then somebody accepts Islam on his hands, and thereafter their progeny from this time till the day of Qiyamah remain on Islam, they will share in that reward that person and his progeny, because he was a means to that Islam till the day of Qiyamah. And there is all because if you show goodness, look at Islam, there is the mercy of Islam. Just you teach somebody, you don't even need to do it yourself, or you call somebody to goodness and they do it, you will get the reward without decreasing from their reward in the least. And there is the hadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there is something which has died amongst us Muslims. We no more do da'wah. We have become like the Jews, where we don't do da'wah, we don't call people to Islam. Here in South Africa, 400 years of Islam. 400 years of Islam, and still we are a minority because we don't call to people openly with our words, nor do we call to them in our actions, in the way we portray ourselves as Muslims. But if we did, and we made an effort, and then we assimilated, and this goes back to racism, then we'll see at the end a result. We need to assimilate, meaning that we become like the locals, we call them, and then we allow them into our circles. We bring them closer to Islam. We follow up upon them, and we teach them. Their progeny and the people after them will then become Muslims as well. And look at the reward. Tufail ibn Amr al-Dawsi, I'm sure most people didn't hear his name up until today. But everything Abu Hurairah does, and every hadith Abu Hurairah collected, and all the effort Abu Hurairah made, and up until today, all the reward Abu Hurairah gets because of what we benefit from his hadith, in reciting them, in the fiqh that came out of them, every single aspect. Tufail ibn Amr al-Dawsi, the person who called him to Islam, gets that reward. This is the grandeur of Islam, and there is a lesson for us to take, that we should make sure that we call to goodness. Secondly, second lesson we can take, keep in the company of those who are good, because it will lead you to goodness. We do not understand that we get desensitized to certain affairs if they are harmful to us, because we remain in the company of those who are evil. And certain affairs which we may have not been accustomed to carrying out regularly, we will carry them out regularly because we find ourselves in the company of the righteous who do these affairs, who are good. And Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu is a perfect example of that. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, in the time of Abu Bakr and Umar, in the time of Abu Bakr, he participated in the Hurub al-Riddah, the wars against those who apostated. And thereafter, in the time of Abu Bakr, also he participated in the conquest of the lands of the Persians, and in the time of Umar. And Umar radiallahu anhu eventually made him the governor over Bahrain. Bahrain is, today it's one small area, but at that time it was a large area that was known as Bahrain. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, After a certain time period had passed and certain events occurred, he left that position of power and he returned back to Al-Madinah Al-Munawwara, and there he gave fatwa and he passed away in Medina Al-Munawwara in Wadi Al-Aqiq. Wadi Al-Aqiq is a valley in Al-Madinah in the year 57 AH, and from his praiseworthy qualities is that in that same year which he passed away, some say 57, some say 58, he led the janazah salah upon two of our mothers, Salama and Aisha radiyallahu anhuma jami'an. He passed away in 57 AH and he was buried in Jannatul Baqi', in the Al-Baqi', the graveyard of Al-Baqi'. There's some famous narrations, and what is famously known in this area is that there's an area close to Asqalan, Ashkelon today in Palestine. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us victory over those who have oppressed and taken her by force, those colonizers, the Jews and those who support them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us freedom and grant us the ability to visit Palestine one day. So this place here, Asqalan, there's a grave close to the city of Asqalan, and people believe that that grave there is the grave of Abu Hurayrah, and that is not true. Imam al-Bukhari says, La asla lahu, it's not true. His grave, it is known, it is in Medina. The grave of the Sahabi who they refer to as being the grave of Abu Hurayrah is actually a Sahabi who is known as Abu Qursafah Jandara ibn Khayshana ibn Murra al-Kinani. He was also a Sahabi. Jandara ibn Khayshana ibn Murra al-Kinani, Abu Qursafah. The Sahabiya, his grave is close to the city of Ascalon, today in current day Palestine, and even in that time in Palestine. Why was he called Abu Hurayrah? We said his name is Abdurrahman ibn Sakhar. Abu Hurayrah, he mentions in a hadith himself, he says that كنت أحمل يوما هرة في كمي. He says one day I was carrying a small cat, a kitten in my sleeve. فرآني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم saw me. So he says ما هذه? He asked Abu Hurayrah, ما هذه? What is this? Abu Hurayrah said Hirra, it's a Hirra, a cat. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Ya Aba Hurayrah. He called him by this name, O father of the cat. And that's where he got the name Hurayrah. And there are many ahadith like this when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the Sahaba al-Qab, titles. So Abu Hurayrah, that name stuck with him and he became famous by that name up until the point where they don't actually know what is his real name, and there's so many differences of opinion. But like we said, the most popular opinion is that his name is Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhar. Abdul Rahman, the son of Sakhar. May Allah be pleased with him. This hadith that we recited is clear cut. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, what I have forbidden you from doing, remain fajtanibuhu, meaning be in one part and let that be in another part. Al-ijtinab means to have something jump, one side and another side. They should not be mixed. And what I have commanded you to do, then do from it what you are capable. Do as much as possible. And then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that it was only because of the questions that the people before us had, the constant questioning, that caused them to fall into destruction and their constant disagreement with their prophets. That is referring to now the Jews and the Christians. So this hadith is clear that what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with, what he ordered us to do it. What he forbade us from doing, leave it. And don't delve into unnecessary questioning. The reason that this hadith was said, there's many reasons narrated, but the most popular one is at Al-Hajjatul Wada', the last Hajj. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam only made Hajj one time in the year 10 AH, and he passed away sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the year 11 AH. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned in this hadith, and there is the reason that this hadith was mentioned. It's part of a bigger hadith. Is that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in a hadith, while he was giving the khutbatul wada', the last khutbah, ayyuhan nas, O people, furida alaykumul hajj. Hajj has become compulsory upon you all. فقال أقرأ بن حابس. أقرأ بن حابس then said to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, أكل عام, every year is it compulsory upon us? Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained silent, and he continued. Then he asked again, every year. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued. Every year he asked. He carried on asking the question after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not want to answer. Then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فقال لو قلت نعم. He said, if I have to say yes, it will become compulsory. لوجب. It will become compulsory. وَلَمَّا اسْتَطَعْتُ. And then you will not be able to do it. And then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this hadith that we are reading now, What I order you, what I forbid you from doing, avoid it. What I order you to do, do it. And don't ask too many questions like those before you, because it was only those questions that led them to destruction and their disagreements with their prophet. So there is a reason. One of the other reasons is that the hypocrites in Medina, and some people also, they would go to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and they would involve themselves in asking Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam silly questions, or questions in a manner that would be belittling, or in a manner of mockery. They would go to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and they would say, a man went to the desert and he lost his camel. So where's his camel now? Or there was a man, he would sometimes get into arguments with people, with other Sahaba or other people, and then they would call him by a name. They would say son of so and so, but it is not his father's name. So he went to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and said, who's my father? In other narrations, similar to it. Another man went to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and said, where am I? Aina ana. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Anta finnar, you in the fire. All these things where they would come to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and they would say these things. That is why this was said. So it was said many times. The hadith could have been said multiple times. However, the ayah was revealed after this incident. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah number 101, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, la tas'alu an ashya. Do not ask about things, in tubdalakum, if they are made apparent to you, tasu'ukum, they will distress you. So this ayah was revealed then, and this is the meaning of the hadith, that asking about or delving into those affairs which are not for us, meaning there is nothing mentioned about it, where the text came and it was clear. Do them as it was. Don't delve into intricacies which are unnecessary. And there is like what is meant by the hadith, the people before us. It is what is meant by this. Obviously, the hadith is general, all people. But what comes to mind, and contextually in that time, the Jews and the Christians were around, the Arabs who were polytheists. So what comes to mind, the people before them, meaning the Jews and the Christians who were before them, and they received revelation through their prophets. They did the same thing, and they clear in the Quran. The story of Bani Israel and Musa alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, Inna Allah ya'murukum an tadhbahu baqarah. Musa alayhi salam said to his people, verily Allah has ordered you all to slaughter a cow. What did they say? They carried on asking questions. قالوا أتتخذنا هزوا. They told Musa alayhi salam, you're ridiculing us. Tell us what type of cow. Musa alayhi salam said, أعوذ بالله أن أكون من الجاهلين. I seek protection from being amongst those who are ignorant. Allah ordered one thing and He gave you the order. Allah knows what is necessary for us. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam knows what is necessary. So what is in the text and what has come as an order within the text, that is enough. Over and above that, now you are delving into something which is unnecessary, and that is what led the previous nations to destruction and will lead us to destruction if we tread the same path. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling his Sahaba, like the people before us, what did they tell Musa alayhi salam? Tell us what color cow. They could have taken any cow and slaughtered it. They wanted to know the color. After they came with the color, tell us about the cow. What about the cow? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them a cow that has not plowed the fields, and all these descriptions came down. In the end, it became difficult for them. It became difficult for them. Allah says at the end of this ayat, فَذَبَحُوهَا. They slaughtered that cow that they found. It was very expensive. وَمَا كَادُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. And they almost didn't do it, because they went and they put upon themselves certain criteria which were not originally there. And that is what is meant now by delving into, by asking questions and going into affairs which are not part of the religion, or which may cause you to become distressed by asking about them. Now, somebody may say, well, does this mean that you can't ask? Some of them said that this is only for the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and asking Rasulullah. But it's not so. It's actually to understand what questions can be asked and what question can't be asked. Because Allah says in the Quran in another place, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you know not. So how is it that Allah is saying, don't ask about things lest you may be distressed? And then Allah says in another place, ask the people of knowledge if you do not know. What is meant by this hadith and the ayah, or by this ayah also, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تسألوا عن أشياء إن تبد لكم تسؤكم وإن تسألوا عنها حين ينزل القرآن تبد لكم. If you complete the ayah, it will become clear. And if you ask about it when the Quran has revealed it, it will be made clear to you. عفى الله عنها. Allah forgives that which has preceded. والله غفور حليم. Allah is the most forgiving, most forbearing. قد سألها قوم من قبلكم ثم أصبحوا بها كافرين. Verily, a people before you all asked. Meaning what? They asked about that which was not in the scripture and the revelation, and then they became, after they were answered because of that questioning, kafirin, disbelievers in their own religion, and there is the Jews and the Christians. Allah had to send prophets then after them to the Jews especially, to make it clear to them what is, to make easy for them a religion. After it became heavy and difficult, what had been legislated upon them, they couldn't manage. So then they just believed and they looked for ways out. So this is what is meant. What is meant is that delving into issues which do not concern you, that is haram. I'll give examples, inshallah. Don't delve into something which is of no concern to you. That is haram. What is haram or what is forbidden and meant by this hadith, which will cause differences between the people and cause a religion to become difficult, is also questions which are outside the religion. Like how they came to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and they said, where's my camel? A person loses his camel in the desert, where's it? These have nothing to do with religion. You go and you ask these questions. There's also something delving into what is not necessary. People come and they look at ayat in the Quran and they do the same thing. For example, delving into something which is part of religion, but it does not concern you. Everybody does this. I'll give you a clear example. There's something known as, some people call it suicide bombing if they see it as haram, and other people call it martyrdom operations if they see it as halal. Right. So people delve into this issue now. Is it haram or is it halal for somebody to blow themselves up or to take their own life to kill enemy combatants as well? Combatants. Is it allowed or is it not allowed? Ask yourself. Why is it that you need to delve into the intricacies? Are you somebody sitting in a land which that occurs in Palestine or Iraq or Afghanistan? Is it necessary for you to know? It's not necessary. Even the ulama, even the scholars here today, which are giving fatwa and they are not in those lands, they themselves are falling into this. The right way is to ask the people who are experiencing it, the ulama who are in that land there, they understand the dynamics, so they answer the question based on the dynamics that they see around them. The situation is what dictates whether a question is necessary or not necessary. That's an example of that. Example of asking also things which are not mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. Allah revealed something in the Quran and in the Sunnah. You want to have clarity, no problem. But then you go over and above asking about it. That is now also falling into where you disobey Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Where you ask about things. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ordered something. Allah ordered something. Allah revealed something. Whether it's an order, whether it's even a narration, a story that we gain lessons from. For example, people argued about the dog in Surah Al-Kahf. There was a dog with the sleepers of the cave. They argued about the color of the dog. It was not mentioned in the hadith. It's not mentioned in the Quran. There's nothing that alludes to it. You won't benefit anything from it. That also now is questions which are unnecessary. Asking about things which have not occurred. So for example, somebody comes and they say, if I go to space, or if somebody's in space, which direction should they face when they're reading Salah? Where's the Qibla? You have not been to space. You're not going to space. Nobody you know is going to space. Muslims are not going to space. Why are you asking about when it occurs? And before even people went to space, they were asking this question. When it occurs, that is when you ask the question, not before that. Like examples like this are about things which you shouldn't ask questions. Asking questions just to debate with somebody. Also, there is something which is looked upon or frowned upon. Asking questions to place somebody in a situation or into a position of difficulty. And this occurs. You see it sometimes on some of these Arab channels and they do it. And there is the fear of it. They have ulama that come on and they ask them certain questions where they force them to give an answer and they know that they will harm the person in the long run. Why? Because they may be locked up. They may get under house arrest. They may be put under surveillance. And they know what the answer is to these questions. All of these things fall under the category. These types of questions are the questions where the Quran did not come with it, or it comes in the Quran and you ask over and above that which is unnecessary. What color was the dog in Surah Al-Kahf? Questions also about what they call illah. Some things in the Sharia, there's a reason for it. Ibadat, for example. For example, you'll find a reasoning for it. For slaughtering on the day of Eid, Eid al-Adha. We know that there is a sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We know the story behind it. Somebody else comes about and they say, what's the reason that Dhuhr is 4 rakats and Maghrib is only 3 rakats? These types of questions are all questions which are unnecessary. There's no reason. You don't need to know the reason to read the. You are ordered to do something, do it as it was. That is why this hadith here, the reason which was mentioned, that the man carried on asking Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam after Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said it's fard, it's compulsory upon you to do Hajj. Now he wants to know, must I do it every year or not? Clear from the text that it's compulsory upon you to do it. You do it once, finish, you've done your action which has been made wajib upon you. Now you're asking, is it every year? If Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had to say yes, then it is legislated in law. There is law for us. And it will have become compulsory every year. So these are the questions which are disliked. The questions, on the other hand, which are necessary, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, is those questions which clarify for your religion so that you may do it correctly. So for example, you fall into a situation where you don't know something. You, for example, somebody doesn't know. If you go late to the masjid and you join in the third rak'ah, how do you catch up the two rak'ahs? Before you know how to catch it up, but the manner you don't know. That is part of salah. It is part of what has been made compulsory upon you. You are ordered to do it. It is in the Quran. You are now asking about the intricacy within something which is legislated, and not asking about something which is outside, not going into different arguments about it. That is what is meant. If you are a student of knowledge, then it is upon you to ask. Why? Because you will be asked. So you need to know now. You need to ask. Then it is something which is praiseworthy. So there's a fine line between asking something which is unnecessary and asking that which is necessary for purposes of knowing, so that you may act upon it, so that others who ask you may know about it, so that you can answer correctly. A clear example of when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam allowed them to ask. The Sahaba, when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned about the fitan, the trials that will come at the end of time, they asked, what should we do? Because there is something to ask. They didn't go and now ask about intricacies. You said this, and what happens? What color will be the jewels? This and what, or asking about anything at the end of time. They asked, what should we do? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam spoke about the length of a day. How should we perform our salah in that day? They ask about important issues which will affect them. Al-Bazzar, in his book, he said, the Sahaba had so much adab with Rasulullah, and this adab should be carried over onto us when we also want to ask questions. And when we look at what we are delving into and what we are reading about and what we are asking, they said that ibtidaan means when there was no context. They only asked Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam 12 questions. There's only 12 times where there was no context that they asked Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam questions. The other ones, there was context. Something was revealed. There was an affair, something that occurred. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said something, it was in conversation. There's only 12 times where they asked without context. And these 12 times are all in the Quran. Yas'alunaka, yas'alunaka, yas'alunaka. You see, yas'alunaka is the answer to what was asked. And that is what you call as-su'alu bil-ibtida. They begin with a question out of the context, meaning it wasn't revealed in the Quran and they asked about it. Or Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't say something and they asked about it. Or an incident didn't occur. Only these 12 times in all the years. That shows us the adab that they had and the respect that they had for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when it came to these things. There's a hadith that speaks about asking unnecessarily. When Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, and this hadith is sahih, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Inna a'zama al-muslimina fil muslimina jurman. The greatest of Muslims upon the Muslims in terms of the crime they commit against them. Man sa'ala an shay'in lam yuharram fahurrima min ajli mas'alati. Whoever asks about something that was not forbidden, and then because of his question it becomes forbidden. What this means, and there is a qaida, we mentioned it previously in usul al-fiqh, that al-aslu fil ashya al-ibaha. Everything, the origin of every single thing is that it is allowed. So for example, you come to food. All food is allowed, ma lam yarid ad-dalil or at-tahrim, except if something has been revealed in terms of proof that shows that it is prohibited. So you can do everything. You should live your life, everything is allowed, except where there is a proof that shows that it is haram. And in terms of ibadat, everything is haram, except that which shows that the way the ibadah is done, there is what is the ibadah. Meaning, everything, you can't just make up a new ibadah. You can't decide tomorrow morning to wake up and add an extra rak'ah to Salat al-Dhuhr, or add an extra surah to the Quran and say, I'm getting the reward of reading the Quran. The ibadat, the actions which are specifically within themselves ibadah, those ones, you do them. You have to do them as they were revealed, as Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam done them, and he showed us, and as Allah commanded. You can't add extra. Everything else which is not ibadat, everything there is allowed, and you don't make something haram. You can't say you can't do it unless a proof comes to say that it is prohibited. So everything is allowed, and then people go and ask about things. Why is it not allowed? Is this allowed? Is that allowed? If there was nothing in the Sharia that came, it's allowed. Don't make it difficult upon yourself by asking unnecessary questions. And this obviously can only be for Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because he is the only one who can legislate whether something is allowed or not allowed, or if Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala revealed to him that which was allowed or not allowed based on a question that somebody had asked. The third point that can be taken from this hadith is that questions being asked, like we said, we mentioned two categories. The categories where it's allowed and the categories where it's not allowed. I'll paraphrase or summarize quickly. Where it's not allowed is to delve into that which is unnecessary through debate, through asking that which does not concern you, through asking so that you may cause somebody to fall into error, through asking something which was not revealed originally, not in the Quran, not in the Sunnah. Like we said, Allah and His Messenger know best what we need. What is in the Quran and the Sunnah, that is enough. That is our ibadah, that is what is meant for us, and that is what we need. Over and above that, now you're asking, you fall into the category of those like the people before us, into destruction because of their questions, unnecessary questions, and also disagreeing with their prophets. And then the questions which are allowed is if something is revealed and you need to know what is revealed to carry it out correctly from that which has been revealed, either in terms of prohibition or in terms of command, then that question is allowed. If you're a student of knowledge, you are learning knowledge so that you may carry it over to other people, then it is allowed to ask questions. And you will find yourself in a situation where it has happened to you, then you ask. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, a man came to him and he asked him about the Hajar al-Aswad. He says, I saw Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam istalama. He went to the Hajar al-Aswad and he kissed it. So the man then started asking, لو رأيت, in رأيت, if you see that if I can't get to the Hajar al-Aswad, what should I do? If this happened, what should I do? If that, and he carried on asking. Ibn Umar told him, I told you, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam did this, do it. Stop and leave in ra'it, in ra'it. If you see this, if you see that, leave that in Yemen, from where you came from. What he's trying to say is that what you find in a text, stop at the text. Delving into intricacies is unnecessary. It is unnecessary. There is the general understanding, right? Now there's a specific understanding. And this goes for when it comes to certain scenarios or certain areas or certain time periods as well. What happens in those things? I'll give you an example of two people from our scholars who lived in the same time and the difference in the way that they looked at questions being asked and answered. The early generation, the Sahaba and those who came after them, they refused to answer affairs which should not occur. Lots of the Tabi'een, the Sahaba, the Atba' Tabi'een, if something did not occur and they were asked about it, an event, they wouldn't answer. Example, can you make tawaf? Imagine somebody in that time said, can you make tawaf around the Kaaba without touching the ground? Today we know you can take a helicopter and do it. That time could they do it? Couldn't do it. They would not answer this question. They can answer it. They can extrapolate. They understand from the proofs and the Quran and the Sunnah and what came. They would be able to answer. Abu Hanifa answered. Most of them didn't delve into this. And I'll mention some of the sayings. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, he said, لا تسألوا عما لم يكن فإني سمعت عمر لعن السائل عما لم يكن. He said, do not ask about that which has not occurred because I heard Umar, meaning his father, curse the one who asks about these things. And Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, when he was asked about an affair, he would always say, كان هذا? Did this occur? Was it like this? And if he's told it was not, فإن قالوا لا, if they say it didn't occur, he would say, دعوه حتى يكون. He would say, leave it until it occurs. When it occurs, I'll answer. Now I won't answer. I won't delve into it. And the same similar scenarios are all mentioned about Imam Malik, Imam Ahmad, Ammar ibn Yasir, Mu'adh ibn Jabal. So many of that, Tawus ibn Kaysan. Many sayings which are similar in meaning are mentioned from all of these ulama, from the Sahaba and from the Tabi'in. They would not answer about affairs which did not occur. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, سيكون أقوام من أمتي يغلطون فقهاءهم بعضل المسائل. There will be a people from my nation. They will look to fault the ulama with asking them questions which are specific, very difficult questions. أولئك شرار أمتي. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, these are the worst of my ummah. You go into intricacies and look for small details here and there to try to make somebody fall into a trap and on the other hand, you had Abu Hanifa. And Abu Hanifa answered everything. So now somebody will say, Abu Hanifa obviously knew this hadith. The ulama of Iraq generally at that time, of Al-Iraq, at that time generally answered everything. Here you need to look at the context. And that is what we need to understand. And today the same might apply to us. When the Sahaba were asking these questions to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where were they? They were in Medina. There was only Sahaba around them. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was around to give the fatwa. He ordered them, they did. Sami'na wa ta'na. We heard and we obeyed. When the A'rabi, when the Bedouin came from the desert, Nabi Sallallahu allowed them to ask as they pleased. He didn't stop them or get angry. They asked what they wanted, how they wanted. And Anas ibn Malik and some of the Sahaba, they said, we would wait for the Bedouins to come, for somebody with intellect, so that they could ask Nabi Sallallahu of things we were not allowed to ask, so that we could hear what Nabi Sallallahu has to say about them. There is the adab there with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that certain things Nabi Sallallahu said it, they didn't go, what's the reasoning behind it? Why is it like this? If this and that, they didn't argue. That would come, that's what meant by the hadith in the end. Their differences with their prophets. They went and they questioned certain things. The Sahaba, they heard and they obeyed, they didn't want to question. But he would say, when the Bedouins came, Nabi Sallallahu let them say what they want and ask how they want. So remember, there's two sides here. The Sahaba with Nabi Sallallahu in Medina, they did not ask. They left alone. How it came, that's how it was. How it was in the Quran, in the Sunnah, Nabi Sallallahu said something, Allah revealed something, exactly how it is, they stopped there. Is it fard? Is it wajib? Is it sunnah? Is it like this? Why? They didn't. The Bedouins came and they did that talking. That shows us that you allow, there are two situations that allow different outcomes. Imam Malik, the Sahaba, all of them, where were they? All of them were deep in the Muslim lands, in the heart of the Muslim lands in Medina or Mecca. That is why when somebody came to them and asked them questions, or they started discussing the allegorical verses in the Quran, certain verses which are not clear, what they call allegorical, mutashabihat, they became angry and they did not answer. Abu Hanifa, where was he? Where were the people of Iraq? They were in Iraq. Iraq before that was ruled for a time by the Romans, or part of it, and then most of it by the Persians. They had atheists, they had fire worshippers, they had Christians, they had Jews, they had philosophers, the old philosophers of philosophy of Greece came through. All of that was around them. So why did they now need to speak? They needed to speak on affairs so that the Muslims would not hear all of this and get influenced and then fall into what is wrong. So they answered every question to show that Islam is a question for everything. We don't need to go to atheism or philosophy or to what was said in your previous religions where people worship fire worshippers, or what was said by the Jews and the Christians. Islam is the answer for everything. So the scenarios are different. They found themselves on a frontier. And there is today the same thing. If you find yourself in a situation where you're comfortable, there's no need to speak about certain things, don't delve into matters. If you find yourself in a situation where people are debating certain things, certain ideas, call people who are skilled in this and debate the idea through Islam. The situation dictates whether a question is necessary or not. So we have the general understanding, and then situational understanding is that there may be certain situations, like we gave a general situation, Abu Hanifa was in Iraq. That is why I answered everything. You had all these people around, then they would find fault in Islam, and the layman would go back to who? To the one speaking about it. So he said, rather I speak about it, and the ulama in Iraq said, rather we speak about it when we know, so that we may give people clear guidance through Islam, rather than them going back to their old religion and looking for answers, or from the Jews and the Christians, or delving into philosophy. Rather we come through Islam and give them the answer. Imam Malik was in Medina. Somebody comes and asks him a question, unnecessary question. Can you make tawaf flying in the air? Can this and this happen? He says, did it happen? It didn't happen, and keep quiet and do as you were commanded to do, because nobody is debating you. There's no Jews, there's no Christians, there's no philosophers. You're in the heart of the Muslim lands. So I hope that's clear for everybody. And this can be derived, like we said, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stopped the Sahaba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also revealed that ayah. Don't delve into affairs which don't concern you. But when the Bedouin came, and the man from the desert, who was a simple man, who needed to know all these things, wanted to ask, and there is their nature, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam entertained them. Hence, we should entertain those questions which are necessary based on the situation. And you can see the outcome of this. The muhaddithun generally and the fuqaha, this actually is another thing that plays out. The muhaddithun are those who collected the hadith. The fuqaha are those who discuss the jurisprudence, the laws, the legislation. You see that the fuqaha delve into everything. And the muhaddithun, even some of them may be fuqaha, they don't like to delve into things. Like Imam Ahmad and Imam Malik and all of them, they never delve too deep. Abu Hanifa, on the other hand, a jurist, he delved into it. Imam Ahmad said, because of this reason that they closed all the doors to questioning, they just took things without questioning, so there must be a balance. He said that ما أقل الفقه عند أهل الحديث. Imam Ahmad is one of the greatest muhaddithun, but he says, how little is the fiqh in the people of hadith? They don't understand what they are carrying. Meaning that there must be a balance. Based on the situation you ask. But if there's nothing like that, stop at the text. What the Quran says, do it. Then you want to delve into, is it sunnah, is it wajib, all of that, delve into it when it is necessary. If it's not necessary, there's no reason to delve into it. There is a general understanding of what is meant by the hadith. Let's take it piece by piece, inshallah, and go through it to understand what each sentence in the hadith means. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, ما نهيتكم عن إذا نهيتكم عن شيء فاجتنبوه or ما نهيتكم عنه فاجتنبوه. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, what I have forbidden for you, avoid it. The word ijtinab comes from the root of jim nun ba. It means to be separated. Jam, for one thing to be in a certain place and another thing to be next to it. They cannot mix. So he's saying remain separated from these affairs which are prohibited. And the next part of the hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, وَمَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ وَإِذَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِأَمْرٍ, or if I have ordered you to do something, commanded you to do something, فَأْتُوا مِنْهُ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ, then do what you are capable to do, or do as much as you can of it. If you look at this hadith, firstly, these two statements. The first statement, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam prohibits. He says, فَاجْتَنِبُوا, avoid it. And the second statement, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, do as much as you can. You can benefit from the statement that prohibitions are more severe than commands. We need to take heed from the prohibitions and to understand them in a manner which is more severe than understanding the commands. Why? Because a commandment or some action of command that we have been commanded to do can be done by every pious or righteous person as well as every transgressor. However, a transgression, sins which we have been ordered to avoid, are only avoided rather by those who are truthful and those who are righteous. And they are done by the transgressor. So the transgressor can do a good action and he can transgress. But the one who is obedient stays away, only does that which is good and stays away from that which is evil. Hence, it is more difficult. It is something which is heavier upon the soul that they remain or they avoid that which has been prohibited. Where did we get this from? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said in the first part, to avoid it completely. In the second part, he ordered, but he said, do as much as you can. Hence, it shows us that what you have been prohibited from doing, there's no way to it. But what you have been commanded, there is levels. Do it as much as you can. Means there are levels. Hence, prohibition is more heavier upon the person. It is severe upon the soul, or more heavier upon the mukallaf, the one who has been now given the responsibility, than a command. The second way you can understand this also is that if you are commanded to do something, you need to actually do action. If you are forbidden from doing something, you don't do action. You just stay away from it. And that's what can be understood. However, the meaning is general. The meaning is general. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said in another hadith, which indicates the same meaning, ittaqil maharim. Stay away or fear al-maharim, that which is haram. Takun a'bad an-nas, you will be the most subservient of servants to Allah, just by staying away from that which is haram. And in another hadith, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, not in a hadith, in a narration by Al-Hasan al-Basri, what he said, he says, Ma ubbid al-abidun. He says, the worshippers have not worshipped bishay'in, with something, afdala min tarki ma nahahumullahu an, better than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered them to stay away from. From worship is to stay away from that which is haram. So the first statement, stay away from that which is haram. The second statement, do that which you have been commanded to do, which is a compulsion upon you, as much as you can, or to your ability. What we can also benefit is there's a qa'idah, there's a rule in usul al-fiqh that says, dar'ul mafasid awla min jalb al-masalih. Avoiding harm takes priority over deriving benefit. You can understand from these two statements this principle. To avoid harm, because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, avoid sin, avoid what has been prohibited, and do what has been allowed to your ability. And then we said that avoiding something is heavier on the person than actually doing the good action, because everybody can do the good action, but only those who are good remain far away from evil. What this principle means is avoiding harm takes preference over deriving benefit. If you have one situation that comes about, to avoid harm is better than to derive benefit. What it means is that you do the wajib actions, you may do the wajib actions, but if those wajib actions then go on to nawafil, sunnah actions, and those sunnah actions eventually have to cause you to fall into haram, or that which you may leave what is commanded, or fall into that which is prohibited, then it is better for you to leave the haram or leave the nafil action so that you do not fall into the haram. I'll give you an example to make it clear. We know that to provide shade for somebody is from the sunnah. To provide shade for somebody is from the sunnah, to plant a tree, for example. That action there, deriving benefit from it is definite. You plant a tree, you derive shade, fruit, all of that. But let's say that those roots of the tree now will spread and they'll affect the foundation of the house of your neighbor. That is now avoiding harm. So which one takes preference? The one that takes preference is to avoid harm. Don't plant the tree because you'll harm your neighbor, and that is prohibited. So prohibition takes preference. Instead of providing something which is sunnah, it was not compulsory upon you to plant the tree. So that's what can be derived from this hadith in terms of a principle of jurisprudence. What does this hadith mean? The second part. What I have commanded you to do, then do it as much as possible. There are a multiplicity of meanings here. There is a multiplicity of meanings. Firstly, somebody can understand that if you're doing good actions, do as much as you can, meaning then do the nawafil and do the sunnah and all of that. Or somebody can understand then do what you as much as you can, meaning if I can read Salat al-Fajr, if I'm able, because the word istita actually means capability. If I'm capable, then I'll read. If I'm not capable, then I won't read. That is not what is meant. What is meant is that what you have commanded to do, you have to do it as you were commanded. And as much as you can, meaning to perfect it to the best of your ability. And what lends credence to this proof and refutes the idea that if I'm able to do it, I'll do it. If I'm not able to do it, I won't do it. If it's an affair of compulsion, you must do it. Is the ayah of the Quran, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not put upon a soul except that which it is able to bear. Meaning that you can't say, I can't get up for Salat al-Fajr. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, if I was commanded, if I'm able, I must do it. I'm not able to wake up for Salat al-Fajr. This inability here is something that you have made up from yourself. Why? Because Allah will not make compulsory upon you that which is not possible. From the ayah, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not put upon a soul except that which is able to bear. So you are able to bear the compulsion of Allah, the compulsory acts, the wajib acts. Hence, every compulsory act should be done. What is meant by the hadith? The way that you do it. So, for example, salah. We know it is compulsory. You must do it. Let's say tomorrow morning somebody damages their knee. They're unable to bend their leg. They have an accident. Their bones get damaged. They break a bone. Let's say the knee gets damaged. They're unable to bend the leg. Salah is compulsory. That is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has ordered you to do. The ability of you being able to do it in the manner which was prescribed is only up until the point where you can bend your knee. So you can't do ruku and sajda, or rather sajda, because you can't bend your knees. Then you do the salah and you perform the sajda without actually doing the action. That's what's meant. Is that clear for everybody? Alhamdulillah, inshallah, it's clear. You should do the action. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, what I ordered you to do it as much as possible, as much as you can, to the best of your ability. Meaning, it should be done as long as you are able to do it. You should complete it in the manner that it was prescribed. And if you are not, then you should do it to the best of your ability. Meaning, somebody is old, they can't bend, they need to sit, they can't stand. You read salah like that. Example of salah. Another example, wudu. You have to do wudu. Somebody has an injury. If that injury, or it's very, very cold, areas where it's extremely cold, and doing wudu in cold water would cause somebody to die, for example. Or you have an injury, maybe an injury on your skull. If you were to do masa and water were to enter that wound of yours, it would cause you to for the injury to become exacerbated, or maybe you die. Then upon that, you are not able to do it. So you do what you are able to do. What are you able to do? Tayammum. These are just examples. We're not going into the fiqh. But that is what is meant by the hadith, that you do what you are able to do. And the opposite is also true. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said in the hadith, or it was said in the hadith, ما خير رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بين أمرين, or something to this meaning, to this effect, إلا اختار أيسرهما. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was not given the option between two affairs, except he took the affair which was easier, ما لم يكن إثما, if it was not an affair which was prohibited. So, same thing, we come to water. You know that you have to do wudu. All of us are able to do wudu with cold water. Don't do wudu with cold water and say, I'm able to do this. It was what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam ordered, that we do wudu, and now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not burden me with that which I cannot bear, hence I'll do wudu with cold water. You have hot water, do it with hot water. You're not getting sawab for doing it with cold water, or extra reward for doing it with cold water, when you have at your disposal that which is makes it easier for you. Because choose what is easy for you. But if you don't have hot water, you can't say, I've been making my whole life in hot water. I can't do it with cold water. If you couldn't do it with cold water, it would have not been made compulsory upon you. That is what is meant by the hadith. In the end, what's the outcome? The outcome is that the people who differ on these things and go into intricacies and delve deep into affairs which are not from something which is necessary to know, the ending will be halak. They will disbelieve. They halak. The hadith says, ahlaka. They will be destroyed, meaning you will destroy your religion. You might leave your religion. You might delve into something and read about something. This is what happened with the people who got involved in philosophy, especially in Aqidah. They look at Islamic Aqidah and then they get involved in philosophy to a state where they start doubting their own belief and their own creator. That is what it leads to, and it leads to differences of opinion of the Anbiya, whether they are alive or they have left us, because their knowledge remains. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the understanding of this hadith. Some points that we can benefit very quickly to summarize what we can benefit from this hadith. Firstly, we have been ordered to follow what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came with. The Sunnah is just as important as the Quran. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam orders, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَن يُطِعِ الرَّسُولَ فَقَدْ أَطَاعَ اللَّهُ. Whoever obeys the messenger has obeyed Allah. So the first thing is that what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has come with in terms of command, it is compulsory upon us. And what he has come with in terms of prohibition, it has been made prohibited for us. It is as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered it, and there is a revelation which has come through him sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The next point is that if you are able to do something, do it to the best of your ability, because it has not been made compulsory upon you except that you are able to pay it. But if you are not able to pay it because of some arid, something that comes about on the side, you broke a hand, a leg, something happened to you, got sick, then do it to the best of your ability. And like the examples we mentioned for salah and otherwise. Thirdly, prohibitions are more severe than commands, because you have been prohibited from something, meaning leave it. You don't have to do it. Commands are something which you actually need to go out and do the action. So when you undertake action which is prohibited, you actually go out of your way to do it. Hence, it is something which is more severe and more severe in the religion. Thirdly, what has come to us is enough. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَدْ فَصَّلَ لَكُمْ مَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِلَّا مَا اضْطُرِرْتُمْ إِلَيْهِ. And we have made clear to you, we have commented for you openly what has been made prohibited upon you. To delve into affairs which have been not mentioned in the Quran or in the Sunnah, and going to affairs which are not necessary, wanting to know things which are not necessary, only causes you to fall into destruction. And we mentioned examples as well for those affairs. Fourthly, you are not ordered to do anything except if you are capable to do it. Meaning everything which you have been ordered to do, if you read it and you think it's too difficult upon us, know that Allah would have not ordered you if you are not capable. Hence, if you are ordered to do something or something is in the Sharia, it means that you are able to do it and it is compulsory upon you. Hence, leaving it does not absolve you of it. You can't say Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, do as much as you can. I can't do anything. I am absolved. Leaving it does not absolve you. If it was a command, it means it is there because you are able to do it. And lastly, it is not befitting of anybody to hear a command of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or a command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, and then after that debate about it. Upon us is to do like the first generation. Sami'na wa ta'ana, hear and you obey. If it occurs upon you that something now comes of this and you need to know the actual hukum, is it sunnah, is it wajib, is it fard, can I leave it, can't I leave it? At that point there, then it becomes necessary for you to delve into the intricacies of it. Unless you are a student of knowledge, somebody who's studying it, then you delve into its intricacies. But if you're a layman and it's just something for entertainment and you want to know, it becomes something which is manhiyun an, prohibited, and it will lead to differences like it led to those before us, the Jews and the Christians, and thereafter the differences Allah says in the Quran, قَدْ سَأَلَا قَوْمٌ مِّن قَبْلِكُمْ ثُمَّ أَصْبَحُوا بِهَا كَافِرٌ. People before them asked, and then they became after that with that disbelievers. They became because of their kafirin, أصبحوا بها كافرين. They became because of their questions, they unnecessary delving into these affairs. Because of that, they became kafirin, disbelievers. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from ignorance and disbelief. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.